I've heard a lot of extroverts tell me that they say, well, what you need to do is just push through, push through, push through. You just need to train yourself. And I think that as an introvert, you never have to learn how to become an extrovert. You can say, this is my boundary. I will be present at this event for X amount of time, and then I will go. So I meet so many introverts who say, Goldie, I don't want to have a personal brand because I don't want to be perceived. I don't want anyone to even notice that I exist, but I also want to get ahead of my career. And I think in this age that we live in, now that you likely have a digital footprint, even if you aren't trying to curate it, it just makes so much sense to tell the story that you want to be told. The number one question I get is actually, what's the difference between personal branding and reputation? So, reputation is what other people say about you when you're not in the room, and personal branding is the story that you tell when you are in the room.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jason Marc Campbell podcast. Very excited about the conversation we're going to have today. For those of you who listen to the show quietly, you've been enjoying the episodes and you've always had maybe this hesitancy towards selling yourself, speaking on social media, building your personal brand because you happen to be introverted. This is the episode you've been waiting for. Goldie Chan is joining me. She's a keynote speaker, the author of Personal Branding for Introverts, which has just come out and is here to share some of the misconceptions we might have around personal branding and exciting strategies that exist for people who are introverted, who want to go out there, get more clients, connect with more people, and truly make an impact in the world. Maybe we don't have to follow in the footsteps of extroverts. There's going to be a different way that we can do it. She's won Journalist of the Year in 2024 and a senior Forbes contributor on her internationally recognized column on personal branding and storytelling in the digital age. We're going to go through this and so much more in our conversation today. Goldie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We've been having some fun chats already. And one of the things I was telling you is that, for one, I know for a large majority of listeners here, I mean, my whole concept was about teaching sales to non-sales people. That's a big space that I've been trying to encourage people to embrace the power of sales. You seem to be doing it very strongly in the personal branding side. And introverts, it seems like the world is not necessarily designed for them to have as much success in personal branding because it sounds like all the loud, obnoxious people get to have first attention. Is this a reality we just have to settle with or a misconception that we need to break down?
So I think especially in America and a lot of other countries, I think extroversion is highly rewarded. And it's the first thing that people view. It's that the loudest person in the room, right? It's the person that's jumping around and being really loud, being really active, shaking hands, making sure they introduce themselves to everyone. But I stand by that introverts have their own superpowers that actually lead to longevity in their careers. So I believe that introverts never have to become extroverts.
I almost feel like that's maybe the first myth that we need to bust is that for anybody
Yes.
who's introverted, it almost seems like you feel like, okay, maybe I shouldn't even play this game because the deck is stacked against me.
Yes.
Can you elaborate more about how that's not true?
Yeah. So I meet so many introverts who say, Goldie, I don't want to have a personal brand because I don't want to be perceived. I don't want anyone to even notice that I exist, but I also want to get ahead of my career. And I think in this age that we live in, if this was the 1960s, maybe we could get away with not having a digital presence because the internet literally didn't exist in the capacity it does now. But now that you likely have a digital footprint, even if you aren't trying to curate it, it just makes so much sense to tell the story that you want to be told. And the number one question I get is actually, what's the difference between personal branding and reputation? So, reputation is what other people say about you when you're not in the room, and personal branding is the story that you tell when you are in the room.
Oh, that's a very important distinction. It sounds like those who are very extroverted are basically trying to drown out any reputation that isn't aligned with their personal branding by just speaking loudly.
Right. And it sometimes, it works, right? Because I'm sure we all have I have amazing extroverts in my life who they go in the room and they are just like, I think of old school lighthouses where they have the giant light that goes boom and it's just like blast light everywhere. And that's how the ships can see through the darkness. And that's extroverts sometimes. They go in the room, they blast their light, and then everything else tends to pale in comparison, especially with first impressions. But once again, I think that introverts do so well when they talk, say, one on one, when they can share a consistent story. There's so many ways that introverts can have a longer lasting brand. And if you want to talk about sales, that introverts can sell over time because they have that trust and they have that credibility.
That's one thing that I often speak about when it comes to what we think is a great salesperson. We often think of the movies we're exposed to, like Mad Men or The Wolf of Wall Street, and we think you have to be a fast talking, manipulative, slick salesperson. But the entire majority of sales that happen, say from a business to business perspective, you're basically building relationships, growing accounts. And if you look at all the wisdom around sales, the one that is often the most touted is you have two ears, one mouth. So you should be listening twice as much as you speak.
Wait, that's so good. I I
Yeah, right?
I so like that. Yes, that's so true. And I think for introverts, we almost have 3 ears and 0 mouths sometimes. So I think I think it's helpful. I think it's helpful sometimes that as introverts, may I add something? As an introvert, you have 2 ears, 1 mouth, and 2 hands that can, I'm just going to lift up my keyboard, that can type on your keyboard. So you have the ability to craft your personal brand also online. And I have a chapter in my book that says the internet is for introverts because it absolutely is. It's a place that if you feel uncomfortable speaking out loud in person, you can be typing out loud.
Mhm. I'd be curious to know if when we speak of the term personal branding, one of the first things that seems to be the key activity to do in today's age is like, oh, I need to be like posting regularly on social media. And I know for a lot of people, even as an extrovert, that it just feels like, oh my God, I feel like I'll be playing this game for fighting for attention. And that already seems exhausting. Is
Yes.
this the only way, or should we be considering personal branding in a different way?
So I think that there's two main categories of thinking about promoting your personal brand or developing it. There's online and offline. And I'm sure because we were previously talking about events that you worked on, and in person is such a wasted opportunity. And it's funny because I think so many of us now focus on online and we focus on solely social media and we focus on also, the big V word, which I think is so overrated, which is virality. And
Hmm.
I would like to say, because I love the color green, if you can't tell, and my book is
For those
also
who are listening
green
only,
too. Yes,
Goldie has green hair, and the book
very
cover is
green
actually
hair.
a bright green that seems to match the hair as well.
Yes. So one of my favorite words, not surprisingly, is the word evergreen. And I think that the moment we can be creating content that's evergreen, it becomes very powerful because not only then can we recycle that content over time, but if somebody discovers us, say, 3 months from now, that content that we made 3 months ago is still relevant. And of course, things change over time. So something you made 5 years ago is probably not going to be as evergreen. But I love the idea that at least month to month, what we make won't be instantaneously just tossed out, right? It won't be completely irrelevant. So I think that there's so many things that are positive around creating evergreen content. And also, I think in 2026, what we're going to see a lot of is the return to people wanting to do things in person. I think that there's so much push towards what is the latest technology, like how can we automate that people miss, even introverts, that people miss that in person. activity, that in-person connection. Because I know even for introverts love talking one-on-one with people that they like and love. So I think that we're going to see a resurgence of small group in-person events again.
I was telling you just before we hit record the fact that my wife is the major introvert in our relationship. She's a fitness coach, does
Yeah,
mobility, and these are
amazing.
the types of things that annoy her. Is like, oh my god, the social media. Like, we're consumers of the social media, but I can notice just like, oh, do I want to go play that game? And the fact that you're saying there's different ways to do that, things that last longer, and also the whole, oh my god, I have to put myself out there. It feels scary, risky, and the internet feels really nasty right now. Like when you're doing an in-person class, people come to you and they're like, "Oh, thank you. This has been wonderful." But you're on the internet and somebody could just like some random person being like, "Video shit, form is shit, you are shit." And then you're like crushed for the day.
I've gotten so much hate mail over the last few years. So I don't know if you know this, but so I blew up on the internet in between 2017 and 2019. I was the number one content creator on LinkedIn of all places. I did over 800 daily consecutive videos. And over the course of those 800 daily consecutive videos, I got the weirdest hate mail. Like people would, of course, comment on my hair color because it's green, but people would even just be like, your mic isn't good, like, and I'd be using like a Rode mic, and they'd be like, why don't you use a different brand? And they like, just that's like the hate mail that they'd send me. And it's so funny because there's, of course, really terrible, bad hate mail that I'm not going to talk about, which I'm sure you can guess, but there's like the hilarious, the tiniest things just made them so annoyed hate mail. The first piece of hate mail that I got, my friend printed out onto a t-shirt for me that I think I still have somewhere. And it basically said, why are you making these videos on LinkedIn? These videos should be on Facebook. These are Facebook videos. Why aren't they blah, blah, blah? And I thought it was just like such a hilarious first, like really negative comment that I got. But yes, I have that t-shirt somewhere that has that comment on it.
So that sounds like a really good strategy to make light of the negative, which is
Yeah,
inevitable, right? But
inevitable.
for somebody who's just putting themselves out there, could you prepare them a little more about what will they expect if b- and I don't want to make it so that like get ready, the hate is coming, but there's probably some things you need to be aware of here.
Yeah, I think that it feels like, especially, this year, next year, people just feel, quite frankly, on edge. So I think we're just in a global environment where people feel more sensitive, where people take things out of context, where people will attack you at the drop of the dime. But I will say, what is maybe a helpful thing to think about is if someone attacks you today, they will, for better or for worse, have forgotten about it by tomorrow, likely. They will have moved on, especially if they're just the kind of person that likes to attack other people for their social media content. They will likely have already picked another victim by the next day. If it's not a genuine critique, it's probably something that their insecurities have called out because they feel so insulted that you were brave enough to put yourself online and they don't feel brave enough to put themselves genuinely online. And I see this so often is that the bravest people often they'll get that initial lash of people saying like, how dare you? How dare you do this? How dare you do that? But when they keep going with it, you will start to have those people who start to defend you. You'll start to have those people who just say, I get messages from people all the time who are just like, thank you so much for saying this out loud or being really brave or doing this. And it outweighs the number of messages that I get from people who are just like, "I can't believe your hair is green." Like, never have green hair ever again. I stopped caring this week, so somebody wrote, like a little sassy comment on one of my posts that was like, "Is your hair naturally green?" And normally I just ignored this or delete the comment, and I just responded, "Yes."
Yep.
Yeah, right?
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Of course it's naturally
Uh,
green, you know?
Jeez. Well, it sounds to me like you gotta laugh it off in a because it'll happen regardless, and it's not that serious. It's usually not about you.
Yeah. I think laughing it off, and I think also having a great social circle, quite frankly, around you, that can also laugh it off and give you context, right? I think, and I'm sure this is true of every single industry and every single kind of person, the more you surround yourself also with negative people who want you to dwell in negative things, the more you will believe that the world really is against you.
You got to get out of that negative echo chamber. I mean, I think a big part of what you speak about for people who are building a personal brand has to do with the type of community they build around that. What exactly is it that you're trying to get people to consider when it comes to community to help them build the foundation of their personal brand?
So I think with community, most people say, well, how am I going to build a 500-person community tomorrow? So that's not what I'm asking people to do, unless you want to do that, in which case, the more power to you. I think there's once again two tracks that you could take. One is joining pre existing communities, and everyone can do this. And the other is starting your own. And I always advocate that you do the first thing of joining communities to see what it's like to be part of communities. So, and this, of course, depends on what kind of communities you want to join and honestly the age demographics, but there's wonderful communities on Facebook, on Discord, right? Even on Slack, on all of these different platforms, there exists. Now, Circle is doing really interesting communities too. So I think that there's so many cool communities. It's a matter of also deciding what communities do I want to be part of? What communities do I want to be more involved with? I'll give a great example that I talk about in my book. So, my partner loves cats, and he has a massive Facebook group that's for comedians who love cats in LA, hyper specific group. And it's expanded. So when he started it, that's the niche group. But as he expanded it over time, it's become just people in Los Angeles who love cats. And as you can imagine, that's a lot of people. And now there's 3 or 4 spin-off groups off of this group, and people have obviously rescued cats because it's a cat rescue group as well, but people have made friends from this group. They've literally went and watched the movie Cats. They people have made romantic connections from this group. People have made, have gotten jobs from this group. So it almost doesn't even matter which communities you join. It's all about starting to join communities. So if you, for example, we're talking about a book, we're talking about my book, but if you love reading books, maybe you'll consider joining. For example, there's this great thing called Silent Book Club, which everybody sits around and you silently read books together. It's very introvert friendly.
This
Um,
is exactly what my wife is looking to start in Bali. And it was so
And I'm
funny
gonna
because
say that she can start an offshoot of this, you know, I think it's national in the US, but she could definitely start a Bali version of the Silent Book Club. Please look at it. I hope it works out for her, but she can also start her own,
so
unbranded version of
I got to
this.
tell you an interesting
Yes.
story about that because I
Yes.
think she made a mistake. And the
Mm.
mistake she made is she had this idea, and of all people she decided to suggest this idea to was the super extroverted
Oh
friend in our group.
no.
And the moment she shared that idea, they didn't get it. They're like, "What?" And then she was like, "Oh, I guess people aren't into this type of idea." And that kind of segues into what I wanted to ask you, which is what are some of the worst advice that introverts should maybe take with a grain of salt that is usually being promoted by extroverts when it comes to personal branding?
Okay, so very early on in my book, I have an entire section that talks about loud introverts because I believe that introverts also can be loud, especially when they're passionate about something. If you know an introvert that I'm a nerd, I actually cosplay, I go to comic cons and things like that. But when you meet an introvert that really cares about something, they will be so loud. So anytime I hear somebody say that introverts have, like, to classically be an introvert, you have to be quiet all the time. You have to be curled up in a corner crying. I I think that that's not factually not true. I know so many high achieving introverts. And introverts are public speakers, introverts that run beautiful podcasts, right? Introverts that do so many wonderful things. So I think, first of all, you don't need to be or you don't need to always think of introverts as being quiet all the time. You don't need to self define yourself that way. I also think that as an introvert, you don't need to also then mask. I think there's so much talk in so many introvert books that I've read about masking, about creating your persona, about and this is very like so different, right? It's like Batman and Bruce Wayne, which I would posit, and I've seen this theory online, that the real one is Batman and Bruce Wayne is his mask, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yep, and I think that as introverts, instead of wearing our Bruce Wayne mask, our millionaire crusader playboy mask, I think that we can just be introverts through and through, and I will literally dip out of events. I'll just say I'm overwhelmed, I've had too much, and I will go. I will just say I need to rest because I have to speak tomorrow, when I'm at a conference or something. And I will just say, you know what? I'm an introvert. My battery just went completely down. I have no more battery left to use on this event. So I need to go now. Or I need to take a break because I need to recharge for a little bit and I need absolute quiet while I'm recharging. And so I have very clear boundaries. So I think I've heard a lot of extroverts tell me that they say, well, what you need to do is just push through, push through, push through. You just need to train yourself, like it's riding a bike or learning how to swim or the first time you kiss someone, right? You have to keep pushing through and it's going to be awkward, but then you'll learn it eventually, right? And I think that as an introvert, you never have to learn how to become an extrovert. You never have to just constantly expend your energy if you have a finite amount of energy. You can say, this is my boundary. I will be present at this event for X amount of time, and then I will go.
I think that's important because I think the biggest thing I hear, and you've probably witnessed this, actually, we spoke a bit about it, is most people are trying to, oh, you're an introvert. Let me fix you.
Yeah, so we spoke about this in I like to call it the green room, virtual green room. But we spoke about this in the virtual green room. I was at a dinner and this lovely person sat next to me and she was telling me how she trained herself out of being an introvert into an extrovert. And she's like, and Goldie, I'm thinking about like making a course. It's like a 30-day course on introvert to extrovert. And I'm sitting there like quietly horrified just because I'm just like, oh my gosh, this goes against everything in my book. Nothing in my book says, here's how to become an introvert in 30 days. Actually, I'm pretty positive that book probably already exists, honestly, and it's written by an extrovert. But I feel like as an introvert writing a book for other introverts, I'm just saying, here's some ways in which I know you probably already have a skill set. Why don't we lean more into the skill set that you naturally have and that you're naturally really good at? And we're going to push those skill sets with tactics and with other things that are not scary so that you can continue to be successful in your career or you can nudge your career up a little bit, right? Which is what we all want.
I know you speak about, how being an introvert often makes you a little more optimized for the long term, evergreen in the process.
Yes. Yes.
Um, could you speak a bit more about, something I could recognize within myself as an introvert, which is actually a superpower I maybe never acknowledged?
Yeah. So I think that there's a couple of different superpowers of introverts that go as unsung heroes. So one of them is being a very deep thinker. I think introverts have so much have so many skills around introspection and being able to step back and really analyze an event or analyze a project and really think very strategically. So they're not usually the person that comes up with the immediate response right away. They'll take time, they'll process, and then they'll come back with something that just naturally is more analytical because they've taken the time to process and really think about it. And I will say that a lot of introverts are also really, really wonderful at one on one interactions. And I want to call back to what you originally said about what makes somebody a successful salesperson: relationships. And so many relationships are built simply one to one. I think that so many people forget that the best relationships are you sit and I like to say, instead of yelling at people, right? I like to be in conversation with people. The more I think you can be in conversation with someone else, the more you're building that relationship.
I want to push something forward, which is you mentioned earlier how the internet was better for introverts and it's really
Yes.
allowed new mediums for you to be able to communicate, whether that's through the writing or any other medium that you can basically control a little more, like if you're filming on camera, obviously, and you're feeling more comfortable with that. So it's tilted the scales, right? So now, like, there's a bit more access for introvertedness. The buzz now is all about AI, and I'd be curious to know, in an age of AI and the technology that's developing now, how do you think that's changing the relationship for the skills of an introvert versus an extrovert?
Yeah, I think that in some ways, AI makes everything fast. Okay, this is my hot take. Are you ready for this? My
Go
hot
for it.
take about AI is that AI, first of all, is a tool and not a person. So that's my major AI hot take. But my other AI hot take is AI makes everything faster but not deeper. AI makes it so fast for you to make 20 videos, right? But a lot of it, I mean, we call this the slopification of the internet. I don't know if you've heard that term.
I have. I have.
Yes, and I'm sure you have, being a person on the internet. But I think that AI makes things so quick that we don't often think about the depth or the value of what we're putting out. And I'm sure if you are on LinkedIn, as I am, sometimes painfully too much on LinkedIn, I just know which of those posts are written in AI. Like I can just tell which of those social media posts are drafted. But to go back to the question of how does AI relate to introverts? I think that introverts can leverage AI to help them automate certain things. So if you are, say, doing this podcast and you get a transcript, you can use AI to help you cut up that transcript into a ton of social media posts. You can use it to help clip the longer video into short social ready clips. You can make a blog post from it. You can do this. I would just gently ask of anyone, introvert or not introvert, that you always use a human supervisor over all of that instead of posting without reviewing. Because I have seen when people post without reviewing what AI writes, and AI is only as smart as the LLM it's based off of. It's only as smart as the collective mind that it pulls from. And sometimes your experiences are more powerful and more interesting and more humanly flawed in a really helpful and delightful way than what AI will do. I consider AI the blandification of the internet.
Ha! Well, I got a hot take as well that I'll push on
Yes.
on this
Yes,
idea, which
please.
is
Yes.
you saw that attention was basically the biggest economy that people are trying. So the louder you
Yes.
were, the
Yep.
more you got attention online. So extroverts had kind of that edge, but now there's something that is more loud, more frequent, more less energy. So extroverts are getting drowned by the slop of AI, which means the thing that is left is what you spoke, which is the depth and the craving for depth, and I think that's where introverts are gonna get such a nice, because people will be like, "I'm tuning out to
Right.
anyone who's loud, anything who's loud, and just any conversation that just feels real will get more of my attention than everything that seems overstimulated." And I feel this is going to be such
Yes.
a power play for any of these people that are playing the long game, have been quietly providing value, that people will just be like, oh, I found a real one. I found a real one.
Yeah,
It's alive.
I think that we always go in waves, right? Especially with
Mm,
content. Gosh, and especially internet. We have waves of what becomes popular, right? Short form becomes popular, like short form videos, then long form. And right now we have Sora AI is just kind of taking over all of TikTok. And it's but to me, because something is taking over doesn't mean that it will stay, right? So few things have staying power. But right now we're seeing such a wave of AI content everywhere. As someone who personally like loves to write, so I also write for Archie Comics too. I love writing and I also love really talking to other people, other humans. I think it's so powerful. I think that we're going to have exactly what you said. I think we're going to go back to people who are going to appreciate the spelling mistakes. They're going to appreciate the like little raw things. And I have quite a few friends who are dyslexic, and for them writing has always been hard. For them like communicating on sometimes the digital paper plane is not super easy. But I think the mistakes that they make are so much better than the bland AI version of them because that's what happens when you also unfortunately train some of these LLMs even on your own writing. So it's so funny because I had to let go somebody go that I put them on trial. So I asked them to write a couple of blog posts for me in my tone and and it was for this project and they basically put my Forbes articles which I have a lot and I no longer write for Forbes but I have probably hundreds of Forbes articles out there. They put my articles into AI and then they were like, give me an article like this. And it was like the weirdest, blandest version of me with like a couple keywords that I use, but it wasn't right. It was kind of like this monster Frankenstein version of me created by AI. And I let them go because I said, I don't want exactly like I didn't want this, right? I didn't want the AI version of me because also I don't need to pay you to do that. I can do this myself. I can train an LLM myself, right? Like, I'm just throwing that out there. What I wanted was somebody who could take the idea of the way I write and then write in their own voice, but add in like a little bit of the warmth that I'm kind of known for. So it was really interesting to see also that also I'm like quoted in AI because I have so many articles out there that my writing has been crawled by LLM. So I will be quoted back to myself and people will be like, here's a great quote on personal branding. And I'm like, that's me. Like they're like, why don't you interview this person, Goldie? And I'm like, That's me. That's that's the quote from an article that I wrote." And it's weird sometimes. I don't know if you've experienced this yet, but the way AI and some LLMs, like depending on what data set they've used, they will crawl you and then they spit you back at you, and it's a weird warped mirror situation.
well, for me, it'll come from all the podcast episodes I've been doing. So since we
Yes.
have over 550, I know there's a presence in these LLMs of them being able, and it's actually been one of the things that I know, at least if somebody's looking for the topics that I speak about, I exist in AI, thus I am findable as people move more towards using AI than using Google, for example.
I don't know if you're on a top 10 list anywhere, but I will say that this is the wild thing with AI and specifically ChatGPT and their LLM is I am, I guess, perpetually on a list of top 10 personal branding experts.
There you
And
go.
it is because ChatGPT has decided that I am a top. And so anytime somebody queries that, I tend to show up. And I'm sure that this is true for you because you have so many podcast episodes with your subject matter expertise.
I had my first person come to me being like, "Hey, I found you because I've looked up for best sales trainers that are good for non-sales people." And so then you're like, "Oh, this is the new SEO. This is pretty interesting."
Yes. Yes, I do think it is in so many ways the new SEO because if you don't now exist in AI, do you even exist? And I think AI is the new version of Google search, right? Like
Yeah,
people instead of using Google search, they're using Google Gemini. So
correct.
it is it is really interesting to see how AI will continue to develop. But once again, I stand by AI is a tool and a tactic, not a person. If you replace all of your people with AI, you will have nothing but headaches moving forward.
I mean, there's a switch going back a little right now. I think people went too
Yeah.
crazy on it, and even my customer support department, because I work for a breathwork organization,
Mhm.
and the customer support team were like, "We can deploy these bots." I'm like, "No, no, no, no. Wait, 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 wait." Everybody's kind of hating on AI now because they feel like it's getting to be just slop. So we have to be very careful. And as you mentioned, having a human supervisor is never a bad idea.
I have a great AI customer story. Can I share it?
Tell me.
Yes. So I was speaking at a conference and this person was saying that he had completely automated all of his customer service to AI. He had a $450 product. And AI customer service, what they're supposed to do is when someone is a little unhappy, they're supposed to give a little discount. So AI essentially charged this person 5 cents for the $450 product. And the customer was very happy. And this happened apparently multiple times because the customer was just like, I'd really love like maybe a discount or like, is there a way to get this more cheaply? And then AI was like, absolutely. I can absolutely help you with that. Right. So customer satisfaction scores were very high and they weren't checking what was happening in the actual call logs, but they were just seeing that customers were coming away so happy and so excited because they were basically getting the product for like $5, less than $5, and it or free, which is even worse, right? And so there was all of these things that kept happening and they didn't notice until 2 weeks later when they checked one of the call logs and they had noticed that all of these products, because they had seen such a decrease in sales.
That's a tale of caution for a lot of people. But that's hilarious if like you just start realizing it's an AI and you play, it's like, I really want it. I'm so mad right now. So mad. I'm gonna write negative reviews everywhere, but
Right.
gosh, a discount would be nice. Oh, but it needs to be a bit more, and you just keep playing the game.
Right. And then I'm sure some of these, and what was funny is he said he listened to one of them and he said she wasn't even that mad. She just said, "Oh, I'd like more information." Right. And then the AI customer service agent said, "Great, I'll give
Discount.
you a 75% discount." And she's like, "What?" And then he's like, "I'll give you like an 80% discount." And he was bargaining against himself, right? The AI, I shouldn't gender it, but like the AI non-human was just saying all these things because they were perceiving it as this is an angry customer. I should offer a massive discount.
Ladies and gentlemen, in sales, your jobs are protected for at least the next 6 months.
At least, at least.
At least. Hey, I would love to kind of close off this wonderful conversation with maybe like a little 1, 2, 3. Like for somebody who's an introvert, has been enjoying this conversation, I think some of the beliefs has been shifted. It's just like, hey, there's a way for me to do this. I don't need to become extroverted. There are superpowers I have as an introvert. Okay, Goldie, I'm in. I'm gonna start working on my personal brand. What would be kind of the 1, 2, 3 steps you recommend for anybody who's now finally decided, yes, I'll take this seriously, that they could do that would actually give them a lot of benefits?
Okay, so number one, it's so helpful to know who you're speaking to. And instead of talking about marketing personas, which you and I probably both know very well, I'm going to make it so easy. So, who are you talking to? Are you talking to your peers, people who are either in your same role or your same industry? Are you talking to your potential clients or your bosses or your board of directors, people who are one step above? Or are you speaking to a general audience? So that would be all the amazing people who are listening to this podcast, or if you have a blog or whoever that general audience is, which of these three different categories do you want to speak to? That's question one. Question two, what is your brand? And this, of course, is literally my entire book, but I'm going to distill this down so easily into a great exercise I do with a lot of my Fortune 500 clients, which is what are your branding keywords? What do you want to be known for? And you're going to make three different branding keywords that are going to talk about what job you want to be known for and what adjectives you want to be known for. Okay, and then the third step, once we know what branding keywords we want to be known for, then the third thing we want to do is how much time do I actually have to implement any of this, right? How much time do I have to create content? Or for those of you out there running companies or just very busy, how much resources, aka finances, do I have to pay somebody else to maybe make the right kind of content? So that third question becomes a two-parter. Either do I have time to make the content myself, which 100% I recommend you do in the beginning, or do I have the resources, the budget to hire somebody else to also help me make content?
I think that's a very simple way for people to get started. But I'm going to give a fourth step, which is if
Yes.
any of this seems to be in the direction of what you're trying to create to get your personal brand out there, to get better career opportunities, to get better clients, then the easiest step you can take a step for is to pick up a copy of the book, which is Personal Branding for Introverts. As this episode is released, it is already available. So go to your favorite bookstore, grab a copy. It's a great way to support our wonderful guests who come on the show. And just because we're having a good time, I'm going to bring a question I used to ask on the Selling with Love podcast, which was, what does selling with love mean to you?
Oh gosh, I think selling with love means having a good intention about what you are bringing to the other person. So that's what I would define that as.
I think that's a great answer. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. Congrats on the book launch. Thank you for bringing this message to all the introverts. And even as an extrovert, I know this is going to be of great value. I already got a copy over for my wife, who has been wanting to put herself out there in a personal brand. I think giving her a bit more information that's more tailored to her personality will give her a lot more confidence in the direction that she's going to be taking this. So thank you so much. And this was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Jason Marc Campbell Business Podcast. If you enjoyed that episode and you want to dig deeper into other topics, we have some more episodes that we've linked here. Some of them are related to sales, other on business, and even some on being more productive at work. Whatever it is you're interested in, we have so many episodes that are being listed on this channel. So please dig in, enjoy, and of course, keep selling with love.